Self-hosting, what is it? In the IT world, self-hosting is when you host your own services so you don't have to rely on the big companies to do it for you. Instead of using Gmail account, you'd instead install a mail server along with a web-based email client. If you don't want to pay for NordVPN, not a sponsor by the way, you can install your own VPN server on your home network and connect to that. Proxmox to me is the cornerstone of my self-hosted services, although I do have some self-hosted servers running at Linode. Also not a sponsor, but if they're listening, I am willing. The services I host at Linode are services that I need up all the time. Some of my self-hosted services are Nextcloud for file sharing and a web-based Office suite, along with Jitsi for video chat server, and not to mention my Mastodon server. One service that I have been wanting to self-host is a Git repository, something like GitHub or GitLab, but maybe not as massive. I don't need all the features that these services offer, but I do like the idea of remote Git servers with a nice web interface. So today, let's install Gogs. It's funny because when I was researching Gogs for this video, I was hoping Gogs was a really cool acronym, but as far as I can tell, Gogs is Go Git Server. Go because it is written in Go, and G for Git and S for server, Gogs. But honestly, that is just my guess. If you know where they came up with that name, comment below, let me know. I'd appreciate it. Under the documentation there is a heading, What is Gogs? It just simply states, Gogs is a painless self-hosted Git service, with a vision to help a simple and stable self-hosted Git server that can be set up in the most painless way. I wouldn't say it was completely painless, but it wasn't too hard. It did take a little knowledge beforehand when setting up the database, but once that was all done, it was pretty easy to set up and get going. The install process is pretty straightforward, and it is well documented on the Gogs website. To start with, I created a Linux container on my Proxmox server, running Rocky Linux 9.2. This is a very minimal install, so I had to do some prereq steps in order to get things ready for the install. If you already have these prereqs, then the install process is a piece of cake from here. First I did a system update and then installed the following apps: MariaDB Server, Git, wget, and tar. Once those were installed, I enabled and started MariaDB and then ran the MySQL secure installation script. This is just a built-in MySQL hardening script that you should always run on new MySQL or MariaDB installations. Next we added a Gogs user. Some folks use the Git user, but I like to make it Gogs. I really have no reasoning for this, it's just how I roll. After creating the Gogs user, I'll use the su command to become Gogs, and then using wget, I downloaded the latest version of Gogs for Linux. Once we uncompressed the file using tar, I then entered the Gogs directory. Under this directory, you find a scripts directory, which has a few setup scripts that we will need in order to get this system running the way Gogs intended. But first, we need to set up the Gogs database by reverse piping in a database schema into your MariaDB database server, and then we'll log into the database server to create the Gogs user. Keep in mind, when you set up your user password in this step, don't forget it, write it down. You'll need this later on down the road. Now the next part is simple. Run the Gogs service with the web option, and then go to the web-based install screen. You can find the install screen at your server address port 3000/install. At this point, just fill in all the information is needed on this page, making sure to change the SQL server to MySQL, and anywhere where you see the usernames or group names as Git, change them to Gogs. Two final changes that you want to make. One is that you want to change the domain name to your domain name of your server, and the URL to be the URL of your server instead of localhost. Then you want to change master for the default branch to main, since Git no longer uses master as the default branch. If you leave it as master, you will probably run into some weird issues. Once you are done there, click on the Install Gogs button, and the next screen will be a login screen, and you can create your brand new account and then log in and start setting up your repositories. Once you have it all set up and you're happy with your setup, the next step would be to set it up as a service. Otherwise, you'd have to run it under something like Screen, and that's not always convenient. At least running it up as a service, it'll come up every time you reboot, and you don't have to worry about it too much. I'm not going to go into detail on how to set it up as a service, and the reason why that is because I don't know if you're running systemd, or if you're running sysv, or some other weird service. But the Gogs documentation does have a fact sheet, and it does talk about how to set up your system as a service, and it's actually quite easy. That's beyond the scope of this video. So on that note, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you found it useful. I do plan on making more videos about self-hosted services, so hit that subscribe button if you want to learn more about hosting your own services on your own network.